From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, it's great to be back with you. How are you today?
I'm doing good. It's always great to be back. And this one, I feel like I'm going to kick up my heels and listen to the experts, which is great.
Well, I think that you have a lot to say, and I appreciate that. And we welcome back our friend and my partner at Estate of Control, Uncle Rich Fregosa. How are you today, Rich?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me back. I know the prior episode you had me on was a little self-serving. It was basically an Uncle Richie fireside chat. So thank you for the opportunity for my long-winded stories to work their way through, but I promise this time I will be concise.
Well, I think you provided us a lot of great value, and always excited and interested to hear all of those stories. And we'll probably take you up on that again in the future. And so if you haven't heard episode 94, please check back on that. And we talked a little bit about the 100th episode of A State of Control. And we also talked about Rich's journey over the past 30 years or so. It's very interesting and a good listen for everybody. So please check that out and let us know what you think. Today, we're going to actually take Rich up on what he talked about a little bit in the last episode, in the fact that he's had experience on both sides of the fence, if you will. We talk a lot in this show and also on A State of Control about commercial programming. It seems to be where a lot of programmers have been focused. But if we rewind back, I think a lot of AV control started in high-end residential systems. So we want to give that some airtime. And James and I have been holding this topic for quite some time until we found the right guest to share with us some insight and wisdom and also banter back and forth, because my experience is 90 or more percent on the commercial side. And James, I think you're heavily weighted on the commercial side as well.
Yeah, correct.
So let's just start, Rich, if you will, kind of walk us through what would you say are the real main differences? Because if you think about it, we're still writing code and we're still in the same languages and with a lot of the same equipment, but there are some pieces that are more unique or special to residential versus commercial. And the users, they're still the same people, but they're just in different environments. So, but how do you go about breaking down the real differences between commercial and residential systems when it comes to AV programming?
The biggest part is, I think, as a programmer, as an integrator, is your empathy level. As weird as it sounds, it's the non-technical side of things, but it's the ability to recognize that how somebody reacts in their workplace is very, very different than how they react in their home. The workplace is where they go. The workplace is part of their job. It's what they do, to earn a living, and obviously they take professional pride and all of these things. And there's importance to be able to work efficiently and to have the tools available to you. Residential is an extension of who you are. It's your style. It's your personality. It's your safe haven. And when you're dealing in somebody's home, you're dealing with far more personal items, concerns. I always tell programmers or integrators that when you're dealing in residential, and we specialize in bespoke, I mean, we talk about that all the time. Never underestimate what somebody will fixate on in residential. It may seem like the most minor thing to you, but to that person, it's paramount. Residential as well, because you're dealing with somebody's environment, their haven, their nest, their place of protection. You're also got a couple of different players who you're dealing with as well. Sometimes, in a lot of cases, you're going to be dealing with the end user, and they'll be able to communicate to you, but they may not be the most tech savvy because it's primarily for entertainment. It's not, again, setting up a meeting. It was changed now, but prior in your residence, it wasn't, okay, I need to worry about the meeting and getting this set up and making sure that the codec, and I can go ahead and, is the DSL line correct and the ISDN line correct so that we can phone into the other office. This is an entertainment side. It's a creature comfort. You do have some life safety, but those are typically dedicated systems. But it's we've always called it that overlay control system, right? We were taking all of the disparate things that somebody does in their home, and we're flattening. We're flattening all the friction points and making it as simple. We used to call it. I used to teach classes on it. We'd call it the five principles of automation, right? Which was people have very specific needs in their home. They're actually simple needs, right? They wanted it warmer. They wanted it cooler. They wanted it brighter. They wanted it dimmer, louder, softer, on, off, right? And that relates as well to commercial, but in a residence, those are kind of the key tenets to work with, which was you have to hit those first. It's really easy to get caught up in all of the crazy stuff and the wizardry and the doodads and all those things, but you have to hit those key tenets first. And on top of it, you may have somebody who stylistically has very specific requirements, especially in large residences. You may have an interior designer, you may have a lighting designer. You've got other people you're playing with on the team that's a little bit different than you do in a commercial environment. A commercial environment, you've got facilities, you maybe have C-level, you maybe have a project manager who's tasked with it. You have to navigate. So there's commonalities in terms of you have to be able to navigate the people and to be able to get to the root requirements. In residential, you have to focus on comfort and confidence. And in commercial, I've always felt it's being about efficiency and being effective and reliable. All of them, reliability is key across the board. One, when you focus on commercial, is you need to be able to get to do what you want to do quickly, easily, repeatedly. Home, you want the experience. Again, it's the luxury car experience. It's being able to put on a Piaget watch. It's that feel. And when you're dealing with bespoke, you are dealing with what we've always called that white glove service, right? It hopefully is predictive to your needs as opposed to reactive to your needs. All basic tenets across whether you're doing educational, commercial, or residential. But the people side of it, it's like I said, it's that empathy. You have to be willing to have the personality to know that you have to relate to people. It's like, how would I feel in my home? What if I had it done? If I've had my windows done or had somebody doing my plumbing? How do I feel when somebody's invading my house? Because that's what it feels like for a lot of people. When they've got all of these strangers in their house, there's some tension that occurs. And how do I get through that tension part? And we've been fortunate that, we enjoy, playing in all of those. But it's definitely more an emotional interaction than it is a technical interaction.
All right. So, Rich, are you seeing, because you have experience in both ends, commercial and residential, are you seeing more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like like crossover between equipment, like residential equipment making its way into commercial and vice versa?
Yeah, and really, what was the tip of the spear? And we've talked about this for a decade, and I went over and over. It was mobile. Mobile is driving everything. Once the pandemic threw another wrench, which was all of a sudden, we used to be, BYOD. Now it's, BYOPD, your personal device, right? And so because the smartphone has gotten to the sophisticated level that it has, instead of dealing with the room and the stuff that goes on with the room, this is where one of those instances where residential pushed its way into commercial. There were instances in residential, 20 years ago where we were using commercial devices because they were more reliable. They were more robust. They had more feature sets. And so we would take commercial products and bring them into Resi because they were the ones that could get the job done. And that provided, the necessary feature set. We flipped. And what's happened now is because people have gotten so used to the personal device, that is the leading point of the can we ... conversation that occurs in a huddle space, an executive boardroom, a classroom. Even professors who always wind up being a source of frustration with in the classroom. Even they're the ones that are saying, hey, well, can I use my device XYZ? We're seeing that mobile and the personal device is what's driving this, as opposed to, oh, this is something that I have in my house. Can I put it here in the boardroom? It's transcended that. This is my life that I carry in my pocket. How can I use this to bridge the gap between the two? And that's been the challenge for us. I mean, absolutely, that's been the challenge for us. One of the things that we're focusing on a whole lot more, just because of the partners that we have, and we're seeing the vertical matures, the voice control side of things, and pairing that with the personal device, because over the past 2 years, we talked about no touch control. That there's been classes, you go to masters, you go to any UIX symposium, and everybody talks about frictionless design or one touch design. We're getting close. The tools are there. We were forced to accelerate, is what's happened. But now we're having to figure out new ways to say, okay, I used to get ribbed at and by manufacturers when the first iPads came out. And I'm like, these are going to show up in every boardroom and meeting room. And I would get from manufacturers, that'll never happen. Everybody wants a dedicated ... And I'm like, this thing has no cords. You can't tell me that this isn't going to be where we wind up. Lo and behold, 12 years later, as much as we gripe about it, that's inevitable. We're seeing that iteration with the handheld device, with the personal device. And so, like I said, I think that is really where the focus needs to be, is that you need to understand that the personal device as a touchstone is not going away in a business, educational, or residential environment. You got to focus on that experience. Everything else comes from it.
That's a really insightful point. I wanted to ask James, what have you seen in your arena? Because not only are you dealing with, I guess, the education environment of needing to have a stable, reliable system, just as Rich said, but also you have professors to deal with, you have students to deal with, and I would imagine that there's a little bit of a blend there as well.
There is. And the thing I keep saying is, in my vertical, the higher ed vertical, every year we're guaranteed new clients. Every year, new students are coming into our environment. So they're bringing new ideas, they're bringing new ways of doing things with them as they're coming in. And I don't know how many times I've been in higher ed for 14 years, been doing the AV side of higher ed probably 6, 7 years now. Um, so, but I always hear, no matter what year it was, I can do this at home. Why can't I do it here? And I think Richie hit it really well, that it's not bring your own device, because there are schools out there, they'll give their faculty members a laptop. And now, yes, it's bring your own device, but really it's that to bring your own school device, but bring your own personal device. If people, like Richie was saying, I have this on my phone. Can I get it displayed? Like, how can I get this in the system? I don't want to carry my bulky laptop with me. I don't want to carry an iPad with me anymore because they're bigger. Yes, iPads are light, and a lot of people do have them, but people just want to be on their phone. They want that quick connection and all that stuff. So we are seeing more requests for that. The problem is I'm running into security, and that's the biggest part. And that what people don't really wrap their head around is they go at home and they're like, yeah, I can AirPlay my phone to my TV or my Sonos or whatever gadget put here, but they don't have to worry about corporate information getting out there. They don't have to worry about firewall rules. They don't have to worry about ACLs and all these other technical jargon and technical security measures that we in higher ed or corporate are jumping for hoops to make it so you can do what you need to do without being vulnerable to the outside.
That's really interesting because I also think that from what I've heard in the residential side is that the network has become a really big thing. So there is that crossover there as well, and a lot of residential systems really mean that you have to also be almost the IT manager at somebody's home versus,
AV
and
is IT.
yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's AV over IP. I mean, we're, especially in the past 2 years, I mean, if I had said 5 years ago in Resi, you better know about IGMP, you better know about multicast, you better know about, all of these things to work, how you're gonna be able to get that data back and forth. It's not going away. It's the day of the HDMI cable or the component cable or the copper to something. Again, I'm overjoyed because we're finally legitimately getting Dante in the residential arena. But it brings a whole new suite of problems with it. And we have a whole lot of residential integrators like, well, I just hooked up the network, or I went to Target and I got this. I'm like, why isn't it working? It is AV over IP, and the personal device, are revolutionizing things. And it's one of those ones where it's just like, you got to stay up with it, as much as you don't want to. And security is a huge thing. Absolutely. I mean, James is spot on that. And, we've had other shows about it before, but it ain't going away. And I always laugh with clients and they're like, well, I want this. I'm like, it's security is secure for a reason. It's not easy because it's meant to be secure. So we've got to go ahead and find how to bridge that gap. It's like, you don't want your credit card information stolen. You don't want your personal information stolen. Okay, where's your threshold?
So
So we,
when I get on to security, I go with the front door of a house, because a lot of the people are actually understanding that saying is, front door of your house. You want to be able to walk in and out of your house freely. So you don't put it front door, meaning that anyone can walk in and out of your house freely. So now you put a door there. It's a little cumbersome, you got to open the door, but you can go in and out. Then there's those people who, check the doorknob. Is it unlocked? So now you take it a step farther. You lock the door. Now you got to get your keys out to go into your own house. And then it's like, okay, there's people who can pick locks. So now you throw alarm system in. So now you got to unlock the door and alarm it. It's just, that's what security is. It's inconvenient by nature. That's the design of it. I mean, yes, we all want to have the freedom to do what we want to do, but we got to be inconvenient so other people can't do that.
I know that we're going to wrap this one up, but I just want to ask Rich one quick question in terms of somebody who's looking at making going into one area versus another from a programmer perspective. What are a couple of points of advice you would give them in terms of uh, making a choice of which area would be a better fit for them?
Well, I mean, the good news that I always tell programmers is you got to go someplace, you got to live. You got a house. So you can have an apartment or a house or something. So even if you're in commercial, get the stuff for your house, because you're only going to build your experience level, because a lot of the basic concepts that you're going to reach in one, you're going to reach in the other, even if it's just the basic principles of user interface design. Say you're just quote unquote the programmer, right? And you're not the touch panel guy. Well, you're not the touch panel guy because you haven't done any touch panels. So why don't you learn to do touch panels? You're not, maybe you want to be the OS guy or the Android guy. Well, great. You've got these devices. You're going to learn. You're going to make ugly stuff. Hey, I absolutely am not proud of the fact, but I will admit that I did use Comic Sans in the 90s as a font for touch panels. And we thought it was the coolest thing ever.
We also used animations, so
Also used animations and all kinds of crazy stuff and sliding panels and fly-ins and verticals. I mean, but you got to be willing to make those mistakes. And the best place to do it, and we call it dog fooding, and it's just an old, rubber ducking and dog fooding. As a programmer, if this is what you want to do, there's cool stuff. There's just because most of the time you're doing commercial doesn't mean that you're always going to do commercial. It doesn't mean that a new opportunity is not going to open up for you. But you have to be prepared for the opportunity. You can't react to the opportunity. I'm a martial artist, and one of the things that we always talk about is that you have to get ready to be ready. And a big part of that is you're constantly training, and you have to train in order to be able to train. Right? You have to build your thresholds. You have to build what your base is. And as you are able to take different approaches, you become more valuable and you'll get better at what you do. But again, big part of it is, and even it doesn't have to be the newest stuff. Find stuff on the secondary market, or talk to your employer. If something gets phased out, and it's a prior generation, the stuff still works. I mean, I have working jobs that are still running on processors from 20 years ago because they still do the job, right? The basic premises: on, off, warmer, cooler, brighter, dimmer, louder, softer, right? Get on those, learn how you think, learn how others think, bring guests over, see how they react, right? Those are the things that make you a better programmer, along with your technical chops, because we've always talked about it. It's not what it does, it's how you get to what it does.
I think that's a great piece of advice and a good place for us to stop. I always say, just to add on to that, that you're always comfortable with the one that you do the most, and whichever one that you don't do, you always think is the harder one. So I've had that conversation with several people, so Rich, thanks again for being with us. If you haven't caught the previous episode, please take a look at that and listen, and you can get Rich's background. You can learn a little bit about the journey that he's been on, and also about how we came to episode 100 of A State of Control. Rich, how can people get in touch with you, learn what you're up to, and continue the conversation?
Oh, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. If you want to try to find me, you can type my name into the interwebs. You can find me on the socials. Most of the socials you'll find me under @rfregosa, Twitter and the others. If you want to find out about the company, fregosadesign.com. Excuse me. And then hopefully you might catch a show or two of ours with my partner here, Steve, over at avnation.tv. I hope you come watch a couple episodes of State of Control. And like I said, we as we are on the race to 200, 100's in our mirror, but we took a moment, appreciated it, and now full speed ahead.
And if you happen to be at a trade show, please stop Rich. He's a roving reporter a lot of times for AV Nation, and doing a great job at that. So it's always great to see fans that way.
Absolutely.
And James, how can people get in touch with you, learn what you're up to, and also if you have any takeaways that you wanted to share from this one?
Oh no, I think Richie shared great knowledge. Thank you again, Richie. And I'd love to get you on here again and listen to some of these fireside chats you keep talking about, because you got so loads of knowledge to share. But yeah, anyone, you can get me on Twitter, AV_James King. Google me, you'll find me, HEPMA, higheredav.com, any of those areas, I'm out there. But again, get your voice out there, and if you want to be a guest, hit Steve or I up.
Absolutely. And also take a listen to some of the past episodes of A State of Control, because you'll hear a familiar voice of James there. So for me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. You can reach my company at controlconcepts.net, and also some of the writing I do on various publications, AV Network and Commercial Integrator and so forth, as well as AV Nation. And I'd love to be in touch and be in contact with more of our listeners. And please reach out to us. It's always great to hear from you, and let us know what you like and what you'd like to hear more of. And you can watch our shows on YouTube, and you can listen to us on both Apple and Google Podcasts. And we would always welcome a comment, a rating, or review. So please give us the privilege of that as well. And thank you for listening and watching. And this has been Ask the Programmer.